Hey you fluffer schnoots, you seem to really enjoy how I have my KDE Plasma Desktop set up here on Debian Testing, so I thought that it could be fun to kind of show you how to set up your own Debian Testing to look and feel a bit like mine. So I'm going to be doing this in a VM because, I kind of already have my desktop set up, but the first step is of course to get a Debian CD or DVD or whatever image through their website. Now, if you're used to, I guess, modern Linux distros, not that Debian isn't modern, but you know what I'm saying, more flashy, more marketing friendly distros, then you might be taken aback with how raw the Debian download page is, but this really is it. There's probably other places that you can get it to, but if you just go to debian.org/cd or just Google it, you get to this page, and there are three different choices here: official, unofficial, which are both stable, which is not what we want, and the testing distribution, which is generated weekly, which basically means it's a CI process. It's nothing like fancy. These are all like raw images. But inside there's a list of all these different architectures. I'm going to be using AMD 64. You can use ARM if you're using like a Pi or something. And then there's these different image types. The CD image is like a net installer, so you have to have network, otherwise you'll end up with just like a shell install. And the DVD installer is like 4 gigabytes and it has everything that you need to get started offline, but I use the net installer. There's 3 different options: EDU, Mac, and Debian Testing. It says testing, but it's not like testing from a CI's perspective. It's literally Debian Testing, and the code name is Bookworm. Now I'm going to be showing this through a VirtualBox VM. When you install this yourself, it took me probably 30 minutes to fully install Debian Testing with KDE. It was a very slow install, and I don't know if it was because it's a VM or whatever, but just kind of keep that in mind. If you go to install it, it may take a while. So this is what a brand spanking new Debian Testing install, Debian with KDE install, will look like. It's just this simple login page with a blank PFP for your user. And the first initial login takes a little bit because Plasma has to bootstrap everything and it generates all the dot files that it needs to get going. So this part is literally taking as long as it takes for me to finish this sentence, and I'm done and I have nothing else to say, and it's still loading and it's still going. Alright, and we're finally to the desktop. I had to cut probably 20-30 seconds off of that, so it takes a little bit at first, but this is it. And yeah, it's just a blank desktop with a black background. So let me resize this, and there we go. When I tested this before, it resized itself to 1080. I don't know why I didn't do it that time, but oh well, recording gremlins. So let me change the background so we have something that isn't just like black to look at. Debian actually comes with some pretty nice backgrounds by default. Like, there's a pretty good number of them. So let's just pick maybe emerald, looks nice. It's green, you got the Debian logo there. But yeah, this is KDE Plasma. Out of the box, it's honestly really lightweight. There's not much happening in the tray down here. You've just got your launchers, regular application launcher, which is pretty good. Which one is this actually? But one unfortunate thing is that Debian actually installs a pretty fair amount of desktop agnostic bloat, like Apper, and there's some accessibility tools. There's tons of different languages, which, I mean, it's fine for making like a one-size-fits-all sort of thing, but if you want just a really lightweight desktop, then you're going to want to uninstall some stuff. And the way that I do it, there's probably other ways of doing it, but the way that I do it is I open a terminal and I run sudo task select, and it pops open this cool little incurses looking thing, and you'll notice that we've got KDE Plasma, which I think I forgot to mention it, but when you install Debian, there's a spot where it talks about all the different desktops to install and set up. It looks like this, but it's on the graphical interface. And you can see that I have KDE Plasma checked, but it also checks Debian desktop environment. And even if you unselect this in the installer, it will still select it. So I'm going to uncheck it here and go ahead and run it. And if you watch this, it's going to uninstall like a whole bunch of stuff that is seemingly important. So this is a process that effectively, I don't know, de-bloats Debian, which again seems weird because Debian shouldn't have much bloat, but it's accessibility stuff, as you can see there. This basically just helps clean out all that bloat and keep it as lightweight as possible. And once that's done, we have a super lean Debian install, which weighs in at 5.4 gigs, which honestly isn't the lightest in the world, but I guess if we look at free says we're using 1.1 gig. Okay, let's move on to the applications, shall we? One of the main applications that I use on Debian is Nala. And I've talked about Nala before. I actually talked about Nala in the last Egee desktop video. It's a tool that I use in place of apt that does a whole bunch of really cool extra things that I guess apt can do, but you need like different commands, and Nala sort of wraps them all together. I know in the past I've said that Nala is a wrapper on top of apt, and that's not actually true. I looked into it, and it's like using the libraries that apt uses, so it could be thought of like a replacement for apt, though you wouldn't want to like uninstall apt and just use Nala. But Nala is a really cool tool, and I don't want to dive too far into it right now because it really deserves its own video, but we're going to move on to the next step now that we have Nala, and we're going to install Fish. So Fish is a really cool shell. Again, I guess I like alternatives or replacement. The way that Nala is an alternative to apt, Fish is an alternative to bash. And again, much like how Nala doesn't necessarily replace apt, you don't want to use Fish to replace bash because Fish isn't 100% bash compatible, and there are certain things, such as Flatpak, which actually doesn't work with Fish. If you're familiar with other shells like Z shell, I guess Fish is similar to it, but I don't know. I like it a bit more. I actually don't know a whole lot about Z shell. So if you're using a terminal emulator like console, I know I showed this in the last video, but you can set up you can create a new profile and have it point at, somebody pointed out that it's actually user bin fish, but that still doesn't work. This appears to be some kind of bug with console, and even though, like I said, I know I've shown this before, but even though we set up a new profile, it won't actually. Oh my gosh, look, it did. How about that? So the bug from the last video is fixed. So anyways, what I just did is I told console to use Fish as the shell, but you wouldn't want to set your system to use, I think it's this command, isn't it? Change shell? Yeah, you wouldn't want to change your system's shell to Fish because it would break things, and it would also make it so your like profile, these files and stuff, they might still work, but it's just not a great idea to replace everything with Fish, so don't do it. But anyway, another tool I like to use is Muon. And I don't know if I've ever talked about Muon, but Muon is kind of like a cute equivalent to Synaptic, if you're familiar with Synaptic and apt. See, this is a really cool thing that Nala does. When you install Muon, there's a post-install script, presumably, that builds the Zapier index, and it has this little loading icon, everything. If you were running this in apt, you wouldn't see it quite like this. This is just like a really pretty way of displaying this information to the user. So this is Muon. If you're familiar with Synaptic, it's the cute, you could think of it as like the cute version of Synaptic. I think it's like orders of magnitude better than Synaptic, just because it looks better, it's easier to use, it has a single search instead of a search and a filter. Anyway, let's go ahead and install the last of the packages so I don't drag this video out for too long. Flatpak, of course, we got to get Flatpak, and we want to get Plasma Discover, the backend for Flatpak, so that we can do our searching and stuff there. Pipewire is a good one to have. We'll get Pipewire if you use it. The last video I said that I don't use it because I've been having trouble with it, and that's still true, but I'm a pragmatist, and eventually I will probably move back to Pipewire because it is kind of like the next big thing. They just have some issues to work out, and it'll mature over time. So Debian recommends that you grab Wire Plumber, which I'm looking for, but I can't see. Maybe it's further down. There it is, Wire Plumber. And then Wire Plumber will bring along Pipewire Pulse. So with these two packages, it will set up Pipewire and replace Pulse Audio with Pipewire. That's what I'm trying to say. And then the last thing is zram-tools. And I recommend everybody run zram instead of swap. Unless you have a very specific reason to run traditional swap, everyone should be running zram just because it's basically like free memory. It takes a little bit of your CPU to swap more memory, so I make a joke about downloading memory. It's an awful lot like downloading memory. Of course, you're not actually downloading the memory. You are, I guess, telling your computer, you're telling your CPU to reserve CPU overhead for swapping memory. I don't know. It's weird. I still don't fully understand it. But while we're on the topic of zram, you start out with like 500 megabytes of 250 megabytes of ZRAM, which isn't much. So they build this package with the idea that the user will come in here and tweak stuff, and wouldn't you know it, that's what we're in here doing. So what I'm doing here is I am setting the zramswap algorithm to Z standard because I feel that that's superior to any of the other algorithms. And I'm changing the swap space from 256 megabytes to 2000 megabytes or 2 gigabytes. So that will give us 2 extra gigabytes of RAM. Now Debian sets up traditional swap like through fstab, so we're going to turn that off. We don't need that. And I know there's a better way of doing this, but this is just quick and dirty. So now that we have Pipewire and ZRAM, I think that is everything. Yeah, actually I think this is probably good. So let's go ahead and do a reboot, and we'll come back to the system and we'll see that Pipewire should be running. If we filter, there you go, Pipewire pulse, and go to the bottom, take a look at audio, and we can see that it is detecting a microphone and an audio output. So I've seen it misconfigured where Pipewire is running, but there's no audio inputs or outputs, and I feel like if these are showing up and I'm able to move them, that things are probably configured right. We have 1.9 gigabytes of memory, and that's because I said I wanted 2000 megabytes, and it uses that. I don't remember what the ISO standard is, so it's not quite 2 gigabytes, but it's close enough. And if we run sudo zramctl, we can see the algorithm is Z standard. So yeah, that is about it. I think there's actually a couple last things that I can do to show you. So I guess the first last thing is changing the logo. I like the Plasma logo just fine, but I like the Debian logo, and since this is a light desktop theme, we're going to use the black Debian logo. So there you go. That looks cool. The background is cool, but let's go ahead and change it to this Plasma background. There we go. It's a little bright and poppin', but I think it looks good. Let me go back to the wallpaper. I like having the desktop icons on the background. I know that not everybody is a fan of that. Actually, I think don't I just drag and drop? Drag and link? Yep, link here, and then it'll add that, and then I link the trash. I know that some people have like this irrational hatred towards desktop icons, but I don't know, it kind of turns your desktop into a mini launcher, so that if you want to launch this, you can click here, you can click here, options aren't bad, you know, it can't hurt anything. And then last but not least, I'm gonna go to my YouTube channel and grab my PFP so that we have a cool little icon that'll show here, because right now it's just lowercase e. I could use a conky too, but I mean, it's me. All right, now we go to, is it appearance? Or I think it might be user actually. Yeah, it's user. Choose file, choose my face. It's like low, it's low res, but whatever. It won't really matter because we popped this up. Oh, and then actually one last thing I wanted to show you. This requires appearance settings. So this is I want to show you this because this is my favorite thing about KDE Plasma. You can change the accent color based on the color of your background, and Windows has been doing this for a while, and I wouldn't be surprised if GNOME can do this, but this is awesome, and the colors that it picks look great. I mean, you know, it's based on this like teal, blue, aqua, whatever right here. But I think that it just makes the whole desktop look really, really classy. So not everything, it needs to restart to refresh. I mean, let's just go ahead and do a quick restart, and we'll wrap this video up. And there you have it, my pretty low res PFP, but that's just because I downloaded it from YouTube. And there's the Plasma desktop. Look, the folder color has changed, and when you highlight it, it's the same color as the background. I just think that's so neat. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up here. I hope that you've appreciated it. If you did, you know what? You know what to do. I look forward to seeing you at the next one. Bye-bye.